USS Indianapolis released in 2016 and starred, of course, Nicolas Cage and was directed by Mario Van Peebles, who's usually an actor, but this is one of his, of course, directorial efforts. And it starred like a pretty, fairly expansive little supporting cast. You had, Tom Sizemore, who unfortunately just passed away. You had one of my other favorite actors, Thomas Jane, and kind of a smaller role, but nonetheless key role as a pilot who ends up, searching for survivors of the wreckage. You had Matt Lanter, who went on to be in that TV show Timeless. Paul Walker's brother, Cody Walker. James Raymer, a veteran actor like him even, and more. Of course, Men of Courage is based on a true event that occurred. I'm a big fan of Nicolas Cage. His early days to sort of, the Cage Renaissance that's been happening in the last few years with some, really acclaimed work of his. So I've been happy to see that actually taking place. I've always been a fan of his as an actor. I feel like he has like a incredible range. Apologize if you hear something in the background. It's my dog panting. But yeah, this is another one that had absolutely horrid reviews, and just like another movie based on true events I did called World Trade Center, which I thought was another very good film. This one just got torn apart too, and probably even more so, but still nonetheless, I don't really get it. The only real drawback with this film is its budget. Some of the CG effects, granted, are not fully there due to budget reasons. Some of it does look like a video game and stuff like that, I guess you could say. But for me, I've seen worse. Maybe I've just seen a lot of crap, so I'm a little more tolerant or numb to it, in a sense. But really, if you're just gonna bitch about the budget, and that's your whole takeaway from it, I think you need to, kind of just think a little bit more. And most of the, the off CGs and the, like the first act of the film, so you move on fairly quickly. And just, overall, I think there was a, fairly respectful and, mature approach to how they portrayed this event. I'm not saying it's, all 100% accurate. But it's not just in that either. It's like how, again, they portray it. I think there's respect taken to the performances and care with the, how the events played out in the film version of the story. Nicolas Cage is very good here as the captain. And he goes through, an incredible amount of turmoil. One of my favorite scenes with him is, when the ship is initially sunk. And, he's initially on a raft alone, and, you can see just the distress and just, the panic and just, this man, he's just a guy, but he's just completely puts everything on his shoulders of, oh, did I make the right calls? And, should I have done this instead? I'm failing my men, and what about, my wife and everything at the same time? And then that plays, later into the movie, with the trial and such, and then the follow up with him getting phone calls from the victims, family or what have you. You did this to my, such and such. Just completely blaming it all on him, despite him, for the most part, making the right calls and doing what he should have done in the situation, which led, of course, to what it did. And I thought all that was handled with a lot of maturity and, sincerity. So Cage is great here. He's not over the top. Again, he handles it with respect with this role. So I thought he did that well. The only things that are off are some of the younger actors are a little spotty here and there. But outside of that, a handful of times, I think Matt Lanter, who's essentially our secondary protagonist, did fairly well. And and then you get to the shark-infested waters part, which I know in real life it wasn't all great whites. I think great whites are just more marketable in movies and such, and they're more commercially popular, I suppose. CG on them, of course, isn't the best, but I thought they were at least consistent, and they looked maybe a little bit better than the planes did. And there's still some, there's still a fair amount of blood. So it's not completely bland on that end. Um, but the most well acted scene of the film, again, this is goes to show it wasn't really just a disposable random Cage action flick to me. My favorite scene in the film is a incredibly well acted scene with him and the commander of the Japanese naval fleet or whatever, played by Yutaka Takushi, and pretty much them discussing what little honor they both carry for the actions of that day, and what they really got out of it, and what it meant to them, and how they're both kind of required to be in these situations, especially afterward, despite their misgivings about certain aspects of how it was handled, and again just the whole story surrounding it, with Cage's captain character of them being sent in with no escort, and which they really weren't in real life either. Me and my wife actually had a fairly long discussion about the events of it and such. So yeah, I thought it was a good movie. One of my favorite Nicolas Cage movies, in a sense, I guess. But that's like on a whole career of favorite Nicolas Cage movies. But yeah, it is a good film. Go into it with an open mind, and just treat it with the basic respect they did with the material.